And we are live for Triple T number 49. It is December 6, 2022. My name is TJ Zebel. I call myself a professional problem solver. Welcome to Talk Time with TJ. For those of you that are live on YouTube, welcome. For those of you that are watching the recording, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. As always, please do me the favor of clicking the subscribe button and the little bell and sharing this with people and leaving comments. I really appreciate it. I've got a website you could check out, which is theTSWB.com. THETSWB. Yes, TSWB is tall, skinny, white boy. That is for real, and it is true. I also keep forgetting to mention that I offer a free 30-minute consultation. That is your time to talk to me about anything. If you have something that you're wanting to work on, whether it be anxiety, depression, PTSD, I do corporate coaching. I work with professional athletes, among all sorts of other things, which is kind of what this platform is about. We go for 2 hours. First hour, I basically open my brains and throw them out on the table and see what interests you and answer any questions on that. I usually post a couple of topics on my notification on my Facebook page, which is under my name, TJ Zebel. Today is holiday depression, proper mourning, and self-talk. And before we get into that, I always like to ask those of you that were with us last week, or if you watched the videos and are joining us now, any ahas, epiphanies, things you'd like to share that happened in the last 7 days? Don't be shy. Oh, okay, well, at least I got one verb.
Working on storytelling skills.
Ah,
So clearly I came to the right place for all of you people that share lovely stories here.
Anything you want to share from the last 7 days, or just...
As exciting as it gets.
Well, okay, well, then I guess we'll go with Dr. David's favorite of this means yes, this means no, this means I know the answer, this means don't pick on me, kind of. But then I guess we can jump right into the meat of this, these rather exciting topics. I'm sure a lot of people are like, oh, yay, holiday depression. What a lovely subject. Let's get right into that. But the reality of it is, this is supposed to be the happy time of year. And I think it's the time of year where things just kind of split for a while. Those that are happy are happy, happy, happy. And those that are not are probably doing worse than they were about 3, 4, 5 months ago. I've had a couple of clients get a hold of me lately and dealing with the upcoming holiday depression, and especially those that have kids that are in the jumping the nest stage, or had recently jumped the nest, or got into relationships, and all of a sudden, especially if they're divorced, talk about identity changes. Went through no longer being Mr. or Mrs. Then the kids moved off to college, and that mom and dad thing kind of took a twist. And then the kids found somebody and got into a relationship, or got married, or maybe got married and started having their own kids. And now it comes down to that wonderful, well, what time are you guys coming for dinner for Christmas? Yeah, we're not going to be able to make it this year. We're going to their place, to their parents' place. And all of a sudden, they're home alone, single, kids are gone, holiday traditions are obliterated. And then all the happy time music reminds them of all the times when the kids actually wanted to be with them and were waking up at 4 a.m. to see if Santa Claus was on the roof and running down and all those things. And so people in our profession are now gearing up to help these people through. And I'm tying this in with the other subject of proper mourning, because it's no secret that deaths are higher this year than they even were in 2019. And if you think it's basic sensational reporting to try and get a rise out of us, all you got to do is go down to the local funeral home and they'll verify. So you take that and combine it with what's going on here, and there's mourning of the loss of loved ones and friends. But what a lot of people don't remember or they forget about is the mourning of identities. When you switch over and you're no longer mom or dad, or in certain cases, if you've lost a business and you didn't realize that you need to take a little time to mourn the loss of that business. And I'm speaking from firsthand. I didn't realize how much it affected me losing my photography studio and my DJ business in 2007. And it put me into a pretty long funk of survival mode. And part of it was easy to not deal with because I wasn't in Minnesota anymore. I was in San Diego. So I didn't have to see a lot of my clients. I didn't have to go out there, but I would come home about once a year. And of course, I would have to drive around, make sure that everything is where it used to be. And I noticed a pattern that after about 6-7 days, I was ready to leave. Because my identity had taken such a hit. And I just wanted to get back to San Diego to my new identity, even though it was survival mode. It was comfortable. People knew as much about me as I wanted them to. But with the stuff coming up with depression, it's real easy, especially now with what we've gone through in the last couple of years, to hide out in your home. We've had lots of practice in having to be locked up in our homes over the last couple of years. Doesn't take much to hide away, not deal with it. And I know it's a pretty heavy subject, but you guys got any input that you'd like to share or questions? Bueller, please. Yes.
I don't know if somebody else, I think sometimes we're all just like really respectful of like, okay, who wants to go first? No, I like what you said about changing places when, especially after an identity shift, I can see why people completely vacate, because I know Aaron spoke a couple weeks ago about like spatial memory and being in a routine. And once you completely vacate, you're stripping away so many things that you identified with that correlated to your environment and your thought process. So going to a new place, I can see where it's a great thing, and it's also in survival mode. And it's also, just complete tunnel focus on what you need to focus on.
Anybody else? Yes.
Just kind of a thought that came while you were talking about it. I don't know like the result of it, but of the thought process, but I was just thinking that there are identities that, because I'm in my comfort zone, I haven't mourned lots of identities that I should have had. I was just thinking, I've never been married, I've never had the kids, and so the reality you're describing is just comfort zone for me. And there was a part of me kind of mourning the fact that I've never mourned the loss of that identity, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the key word that Lenora said for me was identity, or identify, in the sense that we can identify with objects or places or activities, jobs, personalities that we have, and sort of in more of a, almost like I guess that's contradictory, but like physical things can become as if they're emotional things, and emotional things can be as if they're physical things, if that makes any sense. And so, yeah, even though it's just a job, for example, once it becomes like an identity level thing that we hold, it's like losing a limb, or if you're so inclined, like an energetic component of us is kind of taken away, sort of thing.
And you hit on something very, very deep there. We anchor activities, moments, onto so many things. That's why the loss of a loved one, especially if you've been together for quite a while, holidays, first time you put up that tree, then you've got the collection of tree ornaments that I remember when we bought this one, and hit after hit after hit. And one of the things that popped up when I was getting ready for this talk was there are different ways different societies look at the loss, especially of loved ones. And if you've been around enough, you hear about some of these, like down in New Orleans, or Nolans, yes, if I said it wrong, stop typing. Well, type, okay, be nice for the interaction. But they throw a flippin' party. And I don't know enough, about the aftermath after the party as to how they view it and how they deal with the loss after everybody's moved on. And I think that is even harder than the first 3 weeks after you found out they've left you. Because people stop checking in on you. And it's real easy for, I'm fine. Inside they're dying. And pride will get in the way. Lack of knowledge of answers, things of that nature, where to go for help. I know that some of the people that have been through things like Al-Anon know that they can go back to an Al-Anon meeting because they've been there before and just have that support group. people who haven't set up any type of external support group, I think, are the ones that hurt the most. Especially if they were raised, in a tough, big boys, big girls don't cry household. Keep it in, stiff upper lip. You don't show your emotions. I think they're the ones that go through potentially the most torment. So we have to work on our skill sets to be able to help these people, whether it be through regression, things of that. One of my favorites that I like to ask people in a quick generic is, if I were able to chat with your lost loved one for a couple of minutes, and I were able to ask them, okay, out of curiosity, how long do you think it would be appropriate for this person to mourn you being gone? How long should they feel terrible and cry? And it's interesting when I ask these, the people that are mourning, like, well, how long do you think your loved one would want you to be, feeling terrible? And it's funny how oftentimes the answer comes back, not very long. Like, well, has it been not very long yet? Yeah. Okay. And I think sometimes just that they're saying it themselves, because you can tell them all you want. Well, it's time to get over it. Time to move on. Come on, you've been sad long enough. If they can come up with it on their own, a lot of times that will help them take the next step. Any input on that? Questions, ahas, epiphanies?
I find that when somebody is going through a process, and I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but there are people that will judge how that person is going through the mourning experience. And, they should be doing this, they should be doing that, they should. And I'm frequently telling people that's according to you. This is according to them, and letting them move through their own process. And it's something you have to repeat very frequently to people who are too busy focusing on judging that person and their process versus saying, you know what, there's a lot going on. Let's just let that person be and let them know that we're here to support them in however they want it to appear.
Exactly. And that brought up a question of, what's the appropriate length of time to mourn? That there is no set appropriate. But I've told a lot of people, especially my clients, differentiate between mourning, grieving, and missing them. And like you pointed out, Lenora, some people get judged because they don't, quote unquote, mourn long enough. I knew a guy like that. His wife was very ill for about 15 years, and finally passed away. And he was just like, and cleaned her stuff out of the house, sold the house, and was married like 6 months later. And his kids lost their flipping mind. And finally, at some gathering or something, it came up, and he goes, I mourned her loss for 10 years. The day she died, she finally was free She was no longer in pain. My job was done. I moved on. When are you going to? And the kids were like,
Completely. People don't realize that the spouse or the significant other, when they're that close, is already going through a process. And when people's process starts at when somebody passes away, when you're that close, you are having conversations and you know what people are going through in that intimate component. And I also say very frequently, you never know what goes on behind closed doors, because they don't know what that relationship looks like. You can speculate, but if you're living outside the home, you have no idea. You're not them, you're not in that relationship. And however it appears for them is how they're moving. And I often say, reflect back to you of everybody's doing the best that they can with the tools, energy, and knowledge available to them.
Exactly. Hi, Fran. Yeah, technical challenges. We call it learning opportunities. I've had plenty of those.
One thing I'd like to add into that, TJ, is in my life experience, I found it very interesting how when different people pass, the level of depth in the mourning is very different. Some people, 15 years later, you're still not over, and other people, you're over 10 minutes later, right? And it doesn't seem to matter what relationship they are to you. And I got a lot of insight, put me really deeply into the inquiry. I read a book called Journey of the Souls. And basically what my takeaway on that is it's like a soul family. And it's kind of like going to the classroom. Like when you're in school, there's people in the classroom that you're like your BFF, you talk to every day. And there's other people in that classroom that you maybe talk to once in a whole year, you know?
Yeah.
And depending on who they are in relationship to you, if they're a BFF, it's much harder for you to get over. If they're just somebody that's in your soul family that's passed, you're not that close to them. So you might talk to them twice in a year, like in that scenario. So it's not as deep of a connection to get over, right?
And I think the two words that came out, or the part that came out, was the deepness of the connection. And I think it's the connection that we miss the most. I also feel really bad for the people that the last interaction they had with the person was, let's just say, less than optimal. You know, had the big fight, and then as they're speeding away, they have an accident and you can't rectify. And so one of the processes or protocols that I've used with these people is called 3-chair. And you put the client in trance, and I bring them into what I call a hologram deck, because most of us have watched enough Star Trek to know what that is. And I have an area with 3 chairs. 2 of them are facing each other, and 1 is off to the side. And the client, I'm gonna label the chairs 1, 2, and 3. 1 and 2 are facing each other. 3 is off to the side as an observer chair. And I first have the client sit in chair number 1, and we invite the person in, whether it ended on good terms, bad terms, whatever, and have them explain their feelings. And then I have the client get up and sit basically inside of the avatar of chair number 2, the other person, and have them respond to what they said in chair number 1. when that's done, then I have the client get up and sit in chair number 3 and watch this conversation go back and forth, so that they have 3 distinct different views of the conversation. And the stuff that has pulled out has been miraculous. And it's interesting when I bring them out of trance, they're like, I never knew that. And the revelations weren't, they will tell you oftentimes the revelations were not from them. They were having an actual conversation with the person that wasn't there. Which is probably why some people think what we do is voodoo or witchcraft. It's, stop typing if you, well, whatever, believe what you want to believe. But
So let me ask you a question, TJ. Do you think that it makes a difference if the people are still alive when you do the 3 chairs, or is there an energetic component when they're dead?
most of the ones that I end up doing 3 chair with are for people that loved ones or people that have passed and they didn't get to. I've actually done this 3 or 4 times now with people who were left behind due to suicide. And you know, when somebody commits suicide, especially if they don't leave a note, there are so many unanswered questions. And we'll do 3 chair and the answers come out. And one of them wasn't good, but the answer was still brought out. And so I have to believe that there's still an energetic connection. Just like, you know, I've lost some close family members, including my father. And even though he's not here physically for me to talk to, I see him every day. I see him when I look in the mirror. I hear his voice and some of the phrases that I say. And so I know that part. But when I do work with some people and we do regression, and there'll be energies that are within them, and I like to ask them if you could do a carbon date test on the energy. How old might this energy be? First impression. And all of a sudden they're like, 300? I'm like, yeah, 300 years old. Which means that energy's been around much longer than you have. So it was passed down through generations. And if they can go back and trace through that, the belief that we have energetic connections to those that have passed on, it's pretty easy for me to believe. Any input, ahas, epiphanies, questions on that? I know we're getting pretty deep this session.
Well, and I agree with you. Like I said, I read that book, Journey of the Souls, and it's not past life regressions, but it's actually soul regressions is what he's doing. And it really makes you stop and think, because before Michael Newton ever published a book or did anything, he kind of pioneered the whole system. And he done about 5,000 or 6,000 regressions from people from all over the world, all basically telling the same story that had no way. He said when he started running into trouble was after he published his first book. Then people had something to go by, and then he had people coming in with a preconception of what he was already going to do. But prior to that, so if you're doing 5,000 soul regressions and getting more or less the same story time after time with people who don't know each other, have no way of knowing this, there's something to it, right?
Yeah. That's why I tell people the more I do this work, the less there is to surprise me.
Yeah.
I've had enough stuff show up where I'm like,
Well, it throws your whole belief system into chaos, and basically you just kind of end up floating through, like where I am right now anyways. I haven't landed on another, my belief system got shattered. I haven't landed on another belief system, and I may or may not ever. I don't know, right? Just in the inquiry.
well, then you can turn it into the remainder of your life being the joys of exploration.
Absolutely.
I used to think this backdrop was real until I walked up to it and felt it, and it was just painted. And then I stepped on the other side, and it was just backstage. What the what? So, any questions or any more input that we'd like to put on this before we move on to something not quite so heavy?
I have a quick question. So if somebody does have, say, an avatar, somebody they're trying to, make up with, tell them whatever they need to tell them, and that person, shall we say the reconciliation is not happening the way that would be helpful, what are your kind of go-to strategies at that point? Because obviously not everybody that we have issues with is, shall we say, a healthy person that we want to be talking to.
Ask a lot of questions. What would you like instead? And allow them to come up with their own interpretations. And this perfect tie-in, perfect segue for the next self-talk. And if you hear them basing a vast majority of it into the negative, without strong-arming them towards the positive, you can have them analyze what is there that can be used, what is there that could be positive. Lenora?
Tying in with what Holly had said, at least when I've done 3-chair, I will also even have the person go back and forth, but also have them look beyond that individual that you're seeing. So let's say you're seeing me at my age, look behind me and see the youngest version of me and ask them. And that seems to really open it wide, because if you also think you come into the world not carrying a lot of viciousness that might be coming up, you see them as their most innocent, and you then see that they became that way because they had no other choice or there was something else going on. So it really helps not put a positive spin on it, but it helps release it to then go whatever language you'd like to use from there.
Okay, a comedy squirrel just ran across the road. Can I share it? Don't take them back to when the other one was 2 years old. 2-year-olds are mean, vile, nasty little creatures. And if you don't believe me, put them in a room by themselves with a cat that you don't like. It won't take long before one of them is making a sad sound.
I did not see that plot twist coming.
I heard that today.
Another good way is to put them in the third chair, so
Yep.
they can be the observer of both parties.
Yeah, and that's the importance of 3-chair. If there's only 2 chairs and they're just going back and forth and they don't get that outside perspective, which includes watching themselves have the conversation. There's something about that perspective that oftentimes is the aha moment. Because they probably had the conversation in their head 100 times, the arguments and all the other stuff, but they were missing two components. They were only hearing their side and what they thought the other person might say. It was a rehearsed argument. In 3-chair, now it becomes an interactive conversation with the advantage of witnessing and watching it from the outside. Barry Truman Show.
When you said earlier about the backdrop and, oh, this was just a stage.
Wizard of Oz. What do you mean? We had the power the whole time? Well, I needed some help. Which segued into self-talk. And those of you that have been around Planet TJ long enough know how policing I am about people and their self-talk, especially when they say it out loud and I can hear it. And those of you that know me well enough, what is my special comeback phrase when I hear something like that coming out of somebody's mouth? Anybody?
Did you just say that?
Yes, and there are some people I've been around where that phrase comes out a lot. Oh, I'm so dumb. Did you just say that? Oh, I can't do this. Did you just say that? And the problem is, and it's been proven over and over and over and over, is the best description I've heard of it is if you've ever watched television with closed captioning on, muted, where you can see the stuff on the screen, but all you are reading is the words. That's one version. You don't hear the tonal inflection. It's kind of like how many fights have been started over texting. Well, you read that in the wrong voice. Well, our subconscious reads everything that we say as text. No tonal inflection, no comedy applause, no laughter, no giggle, no nothing, no emojis, words. And so when we say these one of my favorites, and I was guilty of it for years, and it's taking me a while, and I'm getting better at it, but it's the phrase, oh, I can never remember people's names. Really? All the stuff you know, all the lyrics to songs that you can sing off the song comes on, you can sing every word, but you can't remember somebody's name? Why? Because we found out it was a very easy excuse to not have to remember somebody's name. Usually taught to us by older people. And especially when they do this. Oh, what was your name? I'm TJ. Oh, I never remember names. Well, then I could have just told you my name is Bob. Tomorrow I'll introduce myself as Jimmy. And the funny part is you do that to them, they're like, I thought your name was TJ. I thought you couldn't remember names. Stop telling yourself stupid stuff. You're keeping yourself stupid. And that also ties into a lot of other limiting beliefs. Money, relationships, doing stupid stuff. Why does this always happen to me? I'm so unlucky. Well, then, better stop buying those frickin' lottery tickets. Yeah, but somebody's got to win. I just never win. Then if you keep telling yourself that, if you don't buy them, you'll have the same ratio and more money in your pocket. Any input on that? Any comments? I saw some laughs and probably a couple of, oh yeah, I've heard that one before. Anybody say any of those things before other than me? I'll admit it. That's why I recognize them so easily. And the interesting part, the more you work on catching people, the more you will catch yourself. Yes, Lenora.
Would you just consider it as negative self-talk, or would you consider it as mislabeling, or both? Because I feel like you might say yes to all my questions. If you're like, oh, I'm really bad with memories, or I'm really bad with names, couldn't you just be mislabeling it and saying something else? Like, could that be a twist on it?
Yes. When you look at the base of it and go back to understanding that when you're dealing with your conscious and your subconscious, this will probably sound a little deep. You're part of it, but you're also outside of it. So when you're saying out loud, even in your head, that's why I know that we say things like this many, many times more silently in here than we do out of our mouth. And so when I hear people saying stuff like that verbally, I know they've already got a program in there that loves saying stuff like that. And so that's why I will constantly, did you just say that? Did you really just do that to yourself? What? I was just joking. This don't know that. We've all gotten those texts where you're like, how did you mean that? Well, I was just joking. There was no ha-ha in there. Then all of a sudden you get caught enough times with a text with somebody who has, shall we just say, a less than positive outlook and attitude. Do we become a little more careful with how we send texts and how we word them? Yes, no? You can type it in, but okay, I see some heads now. Yeah. We have to do the same thing with ourselves. All the way down to being lucky. We brought this up a number of times on Triple T. The difference between people who are lucky and those who are not lucky. Many studies have shown the ones that are lucky simply believe they're lucky. The ones who are reportedly, friends would say, yeah, dude's got terrible luck. They believe they have terrible luck until somebody comes along and changes that belief system. Then magically, the universe goes, yeah, you know that thing? Thank God you finally changed it. Here's some luck for you. I'm not sure that's how it works, but if anybody's got better insight, feel free to share it here, leave it in the comments. But
I was recently telling myself that I'm a terrible storyteller, so I'm working hard at improving upon the skills that I just maybe wasn't a great storyteller, and I can improve that.
Can I comment on that with two different things?
Damn. Sure.
You ready for this? I know, I can tell. I'm just going to drag this out and I'm going to torment you for a little while, just because when it comes to storytelling, yes, if you tell yourself that you're a terrible storyteller, the next part is going to be more difficult. Storytelling is an art. It is a very learnable art. Some people come by it naturally, but even those that don't can study it and become amazing storytellers. One of the things that I love that Vin, yes, those of you that have watched enough of these now know that Vin and Jordan Peterson, get a hold of me. Love to chat. But Vin pointed out, you don't have to be one of those people that have traveled the globe and been to the summit and done all these things to have interesting stories. You just have to learn to be interested in stuff and learn how to describe that stuff. And one way to have people interested in you is to be interested in them first. One of the best gifts I got from my childhood was my best friend's Grandpa Hugh. And I grew up in a village this big in Farmville area, Minnesota. Little village of 187 people. We had more cattle than people in the area. And everybody knew Grandpa Hugh because Grandpa Hugh had a story for everything. He had been everywhere. He had done everything. All you had to do was give him an opening and he could tell you a story about what he'd done. And one day I was sitting there and he was telling me one of his great adventures. And about halfway through the story, he stopped and he looked at me and he goes, I know people in town make fun of me because of all the stories that I tell. But when you get to be my age, if you can't talk about the things that you've done, all you have left is to talk about what your neighbors are doing. So go out and live a life that has enough stories in it so you have something to talk about other than your neighbors. still hits me. So that's where, part of where I guess I learned my ability to tell stories, keep an eye on stuff, have fun. No.
I 100% agree with you as far as the stories are good, and rather than talking about your neighbors. But what interests me when I'm having a conversation, I would rather know where you're going and what you're up to and where you're going.
Exactly. But if you're building, I think if you're building that from the get-go, it's even easier for you to describe and tell the story and envision where you want to be, where you want to go. A lot of these people that with negative self-talk disease, they don't even want to talk about where they're going because it probably isn't going to work out anyway. Did you just say that?
And that's where that imagine. If you could imagine,
Yeah.
what that'd be like. It's so powerful.
Yep, that and the word.
Puts them in that third person.
Yep, and that along with my favorite word, one of my favorite words, might, because it allows for the opportunity for them to not give a perfect answer. And then studying, like I said, studying storytelling is well, it's so easy to find now with access to the internet. And if you study things like NLP and you learn, like Dr. David Snyder teaches about VAKOG, visual, audio, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory, and you can start learning how to throw those in to the story to give it a little more, it's kind of like cooking.
So maybe elaborate a little bit more, TJ. What are the components that make up a good story? Make a compelling story for somebody listening.
Finding, there's lots of science to it. The thing I like the most is when I know the person I'm talking to enough to use VAKOG that they would resonate with. And stories are amazing transporters of lessons. In the Bible, they call them parables. And I've had a couple of people, atheists, that the Bible, and I'm like, hey, you know what? Tell you what, why don't you just read it like a storybook? Leave all the churchy stuff out of it. Bible has all the fun stuff that goes in there. It's got lessons, it's got sex, it's got thievery, it's got murder, it has songs, it has poems, they're like, huh? But whether you're religious or not, some of the parables in there are extremely classic. Lessons hidden right inside of a story. And some of them will have catchy phrases to get the people's attention. One of our people on this call started off at a great talk, letting everybody know that there was a story coming up that was about murder. Yeah, I see you giggling. Yes. the person who said they're not very good at telling stories, luckily recorded. Is it okay? I don't want to freak you out and slam you under the bus. It's not a slam. It's you. Lenora
You're good.
recorded a talk that she did for BNI and did such a fabulous job. And she's like, oh, and I've got the story I got to share with you guys today, and it has murder in it. And everybody's like, huh? And I don't have it recorded verbatim in my head. All I remember is somebody was driving in a car, and all of a sudden a spider comes down, and they're like, ah, freak out. They murdered the spider. And there was enough fun and VAKOG and suspense and plot twist that it was so classic. At the very end of the recording, what'd that guy say?
At the end of the recording, he said, so what happened to the spider? And he was so wrapped up in the story because, all right. So for BNI, when you stand up and you tell people your 60-second talk as to why you're there, you announce yourself. And what I've been trying to do is to spice it up and keep people really engaged versus kind of robotic and typewriting. So I had said, I have a really great story for you guys. It ends in murder, but don't worry, you'll be fine. Keep drinking your coffee. So I got a call the other day and they said, and my phone rang and I answered it and they go, are you Lenora Edwards? And I said, yeah, maybe. Are you a hypnotist? Possibly. Do you help people get the change that you want? Yeah, can I help you? And they said, then fix my wife. And I then turned to my audience that was with me and I said, for my younger husbands in the crowd, this is something that you do not say to your wives. My seniored husbands already know this. And before I know it, I found myself in the middle of this couple's fight while I was on speaker. And it turns out that the wife was driving down the highway and their biggest nightmare came true. The husband was not in the car. The wife is driving down the highway and her two girls are in the back and they're singing along, having a great time. And all of a sudden she starts weaving and back and forth. And then the itsy bitsy spider had come down from the sun visor. And as it did, she's screaming and she's trying to rip herself out of the seatbelt and she can't do it fast enough. And the car comes to a screeching halt into a guardrail. And as the mother is getting out of the car, screaming and shrieking, the two girls in the back are perfectly fine. And the tween had reached forward and killed the spider. So if you know of anybody that is having any issues with fears or phobias or would like to get rid of anything that's causing them stress or anxiety, please feel free to share my information. My name is Lenora Edwards. I'm a success coach and a teacher. You can reach me at dtbhorizons.com. And that is how I did my longer than 60-second speech in BNI.
And what was the comment from the guy at the very end?
Did this, what happened to the spider? He didn't hear me go forward and say she killed the spider. Got all wrapped up in it.
This, folks, from the person who was worried about not being able to tell a story. But that's part of the fun of it. And another one that, if you want to get really good at it, study, and I just had it, squirrel took it away. Paul Harvey. Anybody know who Paul Harvey is? Paul Harvey had the ability to tell short stories about people that would have you, and where I grew up, Paul Harvey's Rest of the Story, every day at 12:20 p.m. on Kick FM. And they'd get done with the news and it was time for Paul Harvey's Rest of the Story, and people would stop because you had to sit there and listen to Paul Harvey and you would try to figure out who he was talking about. He would tell you all these amazing facts about this person. And then at the very end, reveal who they are. And finish it with, and now you know the rest of the story. And one of the things that a lot of people didn't know about Paul Harvey was he learned how to talk the way he did. I believe it was because his mother was hard of hearing. And so he learned to talk very crisp, clear, phonetically so that she could understand what he was saying. And that brings us up to the top of the first hour, which means it's time for me to open the floor and pass the mic on to you guys. If there's anything that you would like to discuss, questions, topics that you would like, that you had thought of during the week. This is where we all work together to help people out with challenges or topics. Anybody got anything to toss on the table? This is where it usually gets quiet for a little bit because everybody's being kind, letting the other people think if they've got something. Otherwise, that's a cow joke. I'll throw a cow. Gotcha.
That's easy.
Here's a quote. People know I like to throw quotes at you guys as well. Don't let the learning from your own experiences take too long. If you've been doing it wrong for the last 10 years, I would suggest that's long enough. Jim Rohn. And as always, I'll read it again. So, don't let the learning from your own experiences take too long. If you've been doing it wrong for the last 10 years, I would suggest that's long enough. Jim Rohn. That's why I like to ask people, what do you like best about the pain that you've been going through? When would now be a good time to change it? It hurts so good. Well, if they're doing it right and it hurts so good.
What did you ask specifically? What do you like best about the pain or the change?
Yeah.
The pain.
About the pain. You know, the people that like to complain about how this sucks or that sucks, and well, what are you doing about it? Well, you know, kind of like those people that like to live in the floodplain. And sure enough, they get interviewed by the local news. So this is the 12th time your house has been flooded? Yeah, you know, that happens. So what are you going to do? Oh, we're going to rebuild. We've been here for, 40 years and, we're resilient. It's not quite the word I would use, but just saying.
That's a good question.
Yeah. So, guys got to give me something or else I'm just going to keep throwing stuff out there.
I'll jump in for just a second. The conversation we were having did kind of have me thinking about the concept. We talk about identity statements, and there are some things that, aren't as concrete. But for instance, if I were to go out there and say, I am an amazing piano player and I've never touched a piano in my life, for example, obviously the mind's not going to process that properly. But I just had kind of the thought in this discussion. What if you said, I am an amazing piano player considering how much time I've spent practicing and studying it? Which, if the answer is 0 minutes, then of course my expected return is going to be zero skill. If I've spent a few minutes, a tiny bit of skill. Anyway, thought I'd throw that out there. I don't know if anybody else has any comments, but.
Anybody, I've got some input, but I like to let you guys go first. So anybody got anything to share with that?
I feel like that's almost in alignment with questioning affirmations, like how I'm getting better and better. What am I doing that I'm getting better and better? And what you said with practicing and putting how much time and investment that you've been putting into it, Holly. Really good answer.
Anybody else?
This isn't quite connected, but just Holly, the way that you said, you know, if I say this a certain way, my brain's not going to process it, sort of implying like that's too distant from reality for it to kind of believe is true. I don't know if that's true, because Elijah and I played with the technique when I was over there with submodalities and things like that. And this wasn't exactly it, but if you would take the, you know, something that had the submodalities of something you don't understand and change it to modalities that you do understand, your brain then almost kind of goes, okay, well, I do understand this, so how do I rewire myself to make the fact that I understand this now true? And some of the ways that you would kind of put kind of nonsense into different positions, and your brain would just accept that it was true, and sort of, I want to use the word rationalize, but that sort of has connotations of making stuff up or it being fake or something. But I don't know, don't underestimate what your brain will be able to make true for you, even if it's quite a big jump, is probably what I'm saying.
Exactly. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Great. Absolutely, Aaron. And this sort of links back to Lenora's storytelling, that if you actually place yourself in the story that you're telling about, playing the piano or whatever, and make it as real with all the VAKOGs and tell somebody else about it, you're actually hypnotizing yourself to take on some of those energies anyway. So why not tell wonderful, amazing stories about your life to other people so you can hear them, as well as just for fun. You don't have to go in thinking you'll believe them, but there will be some part of it that is retained in your unconscious mind, opening up new doorways. Why not give it a try? So make your response to that.
Yeah.
I would agree with you, Fran. But the one thing that I would add to that, in order, you need to use other modalities to link it in. So if you were doing that and you basically went into state control on that and seeing yourself playing the piano, moving your hands and that kind of stuff, is probably going to lock it in that much stronger too, even though you've never played the piano or practiced, right?
And another thing I want to add to that is we'd talked about this on Triple T in one of the other ones, is the difference between a software and a hardware issue. If the only piano that you've got is your kid's, 6, where you play the same key but it plays a song, you can call yourself a great piano player, like all of the Guitar Hero. I'm a great guitar player. Oh, I riff and everything. I'm like, you got 3 buttons on the neck of the guitar, and the amount of time that it took you to figure out how to reach the top level of that game, you could have actually learned how to play a real guitar. So I think part of it is conception of what you're trying to accomplish and why. I'm obviously not built to be an amazing gymnast, tumbler, or, I'm not going to be the world's top racing horse jockey. That would look cute, wouldn't it? 6'4" racing against these guys that are like, 4'5", and they weigh 60 pounds, because that's what the horse doesn't even know that they're on there. But I think that's less of a problem than the people that, when we go back to self-talk, that talk themselves out of so many things. The amount of dreams that they've allowed themselves or others to take away from them is crazy. It's kind of like, I picture it as in the house that I grew up in, my sister's bedroom was wallpapered with stuff out of magazines. Pictures of teenage hunks and cool cars and great houses and all of these things. And I remember when we were selling the house, what it felt like taking those down. And I remember, I think it was Dad was just going to go in there and just, kind of like a kid with a Christmas, the wrapping on a Christmas gift. And I was like, can't do that. I'll take care of this room. And I took them down because I knew what they meant when they were put up. I think some people don't give the same respect to their dreams when they take them down. When you were a kid, what did you want to do? What could you have been? And then somebody made some stupid comment, and you walked up to that dream and you go, stupid anyway. And you never picked that dream back up. You remembered it. Lenora.
Very much so with remembering dreams. And I, especially because I think there's something online that says, like, what did they pay you to give up your dream?
Yes.
How much did they pay you to give up on your dream? And even with other people criticizing around you, I feel like to go against the grain and to not fit into this mold, into society of, you graduate and you do this and you do that, and then you do this and that whole spiel. I did want to circle back to what Holly had said about noticing when I grew up, I sung in front of the mirror with a hairbrush all the time. Loved it. And when you're trying to talk and release that negative self-talk, I know Elijah had a really awesome technique of drop your tongue from the roof of your mouth. But I also find talking out loud, or quite literally writing it down, or talking whether to yourself or having a pretend conversation, because you change everything once you actually start hearing it come out. You're that feedback loop, you're almost quite appalled if you're really criticizing yourself and like, holy shit, and recognizing that is really what's been jamming around up here. So when you actually have a conversation with somebody, or even pretend to educate somebody, or just pop on a video for yourself and educate whomever you're talking to about the skills, you're then able to really look back and say, wow, I know more than I thought I did. And really expanding your own awareness of how much you know.
And I had a squirrel caught it before it got too far away. One of the other things that I like to tell people when I hear that is, how would you react if somebody whose opinion you really cared about said that to your face? How would that feel? And yet the person that you have to live with your entire life, who should love you more than anybody else, gets away with saying that, that also gets looks on people's faces.
I just wanted to comment on Lenora's, what Lenora was saying. I think we've all had that experience that we've run things through our head, and then when we spoke it out loud, oh, that sounded way better in my head than it did when I actually spoke it out loud. And that's why it's so critically important.
Us guys also know that there are certain things that come out and we're like, that sounded way better in my head than it did coming out.
I did not see that plot twist coming at all.
It's where some of us guys develop some of our first paranoia.
This is only really tangentially connected to what we're talking about, but
Good.
when I was traveling and when I saw my nephews, I sat down a couple of times and did some drawing, which I haven't done in ages, and it was really fun to kind of do it. But it sort of made me think a while later when I thought about it, how weird it is that when there's kids and they do drawings and things like that, we reward it so much of, oh, isn't that an amazing drawing? You're so clever and da-da-da. Nothing wrong with that. But then when they get to 16 or 17 and they come and say, I think I want to be an artist. I think I want to draw. What are you talking about? You want to be an artist? You can't do that. You need to get a real job. Da, da, da. And this sudden disconnect between all this kind of reward that they had when they were kids of, being artistic is really good and being creative is really good. And then, I want to do this later on because I've been rewarded for it. And all of a sudden it's, no, it's about, earning a living, making money, all that kind of thing. It was just something that I thought of. An interesting way that we mess up kids without realizing it.
Gary Vaynerchuk had a great, still he talks to kids all the time. And one of the things I like about it is he goes, if you don't want to go to college, don't. If you got something that you want to do that's passionate, that's burning inside of you, do it. You know why? Because you're young. And if you screw up, what do you got to lose? You're not married, you don't have kids, you don't have a mortgage. If you think you want to be the rock star, grab your guitar or your drums and go out and do it. And if you don't make it, you tried. One of the other ones that I loved was one of his classics. He's just finished a talk. He's getting into the vehicle, that limo or whatever that's going to take away, and he's got all these fans, and he's got the window down, and this one lady comes up and she goes, tell me something inspirational. He looks her dead in the eyes and he goes, you're going to effing die. So when are you going to start living? And the look on her face, that was all she needed to hear. And she just, most people would be like, you told her what? That she's going to effing die? Yeah, you're not going to live forever. You're going to effing die. So what are you going to do while you're alive? And the state shift that happened in her was so visible. Just like that. And sometimes you don't know what kind of small comment you can make to somebody and completely change them. Yes, Lenora.
There was a real, I know, Aaron, when you pointed out about your nephews, I know they're so important to you. There's this picture online, and it's two adults, and they have clipped wings. And one of the adults is holding a scissor, and in front of them is their small child, and they're clipping their wings. And it's very much, this is what you do. This is, just passing it and not even thinking about it. And it's very heartbreaking. I at least feel like in the last number of years, we're really seeing a shift, but it might also just be because I'm more aware of it. So I don't really know if that shift is just actually happening or it's just my own filters picking it up. But to really support people. And I definitely would encourage people, if it's important to you, don't tell people close to you, because they can rain on your parade faster than you could even blink.
Yeah. Yep. One thing, a lot of the coaches and stuff out there, especially in business and stuff, they tell lots of people, don't tell people what you're doing. Show them. Because by the time they see it, it's too late for them to tell you can't do it. I've been classic for that. I remember when I decided that I was going to Europe. I just showed up to, I had a job, I was a bar manager, and got let go because I was too young to be running a bar, even though I had increased sales and all sorts of improvements, which torqued me off at the time. But in retrospect, thank you, because I got to spend a year in Europe. But I just showed up and told Mom, I'm going to go to Europe for a year or something like that. And she's like, by then she'd already been conditioned enough. She was like, okay, honey. And I told very few friends. All of a sudden they heard, and I was already in Europe, and they're like, whoa, what? I'm like, just something I need to do. Especially when you grow up in a village the size of mine. Everybody knows everybody's business. And not enough, there weren't enough of them that had done enough stuff to talk about themselves. I know. My grandma wrote the gossip column for the local newspaper. True story. In the Parker's Prairie Herald Journal, one of them. Yep. And so she had the inside scoop on everybody's stuff, which was good and bad, because pretty soon everybody knew that the last person you wanted to tell was the people in her tribe. Because as soon as they found out, straight to the paper. So guess who couldn't get away with anything? In fact, one of my buddies got mad at me when he came up and was like, when were you going to tell me you were going to Yellowstone for your internship? I'm like, how did you, Grandma? Like, dude, I can't get the news out faster than my grandmother. It's impossible. I should have just, yes, that's how you were going to find out. Grandma, let everybody know. Yes, I'm going. Welcome to my world. And that brings us to 35 minutes left. What else we want to talk about? Telegraph, telephone, telegramma. Yes. Yep. I'm pretty sure that if I trace the ancestral, there was smoke rings involved or smoke signals somewhere. Tapping on the railroad tracks. Morse code coming through. Well, if nobody's got anything, for those of us on the upper top end of the planet, or I should go ahead.
I was going to ask a question for the group, actually.
Please.
When what are everyone's thoughts when you find that you hold a lot of energy in a specific body part? So for me, I hold a lot of energy in my stomach, and that is a freaking interstate connection between mind and body. So any thoughts or any nice, lovely hacks that you guys know of? I don't do gray room every day. I know some people have like really great energetic hygiene things that they do. I have yet to acclimate to one, so any insight and guidance is greatly appreciated.
Have at it, folks.
Not all at once. I can't hear you all.
I'll jump in for a second. I don't know if this will help. So I tend to carry a lot of energy in certain spots as well, specifically my head one day. And we were doing exercises that involved imagining you were in your head, and it was driving me crazy. And so I actually moved down to my gut and created a distance between the two. And for some reason that sucked all the energy, kind of like a magnetic force. So, I mean, I know it's kind of an unusual thing, but it's the first thing popping into my head of find an alternate pole, create kind of like a lot of energy there, and then imagine it being a magnetic force drawing it both directions.
Linda had suggested Reiki. And for those of you watching the recording, you can reach out to any of us and get explanations on all of these. We won't turn this into classes on, I mean, I guess we could, but.
I guess my question for you, Lenora, do you do any color breathing at all?
I do.
Do you have a shower every day?
I do.
So what I find it's you go into the shower and just let the water, imagine whatever color is going to dissolve that as the water's hitting you, washing, flushing, taking it back down to Mother Earth. So it's fully dissolved.
All right, I will give that a try. Thank you.
Anybody else? It also helps to recognize that it can be a challenge being the driver and the passenger of the vehicle at the same time. And sometimes, even those of us in the industry have to have somebody that we can reach out to walk us through certain protocols. And it was funny when I was teaching and training with Dr. David, one of the students had been doing gray room, and he came up and he goes, every time I go into gray room, it's like there's still something there. When will it be done? David goes, never. It's like taking a shower one time for the rest of your life. And he goes, really? But because, yeah, it's part of living. Gray room gets dirty. It's like you got to clean your house, like you got to take a shower, like if you drive your vehicle, it's probably going to need a car wash. So you got to figure out ways to protect, conserve, manage your energy. And then if you're working with clients, like a number of us do, you definitely have to learn what we like to refer to as energy hygiene. One of the things, I got a couple of plants in my office that are there just because they enjoy the throwing off energy, just kind of like there are plenty of plants that are planted along freeways specifically because they thrive in an environment high in CO2 and they give us back oxygen. What a concept.
Well, I now know how not to mute myself on my phone when I'm on Zoom. I disappeared. So I've missed a whole load of conversation, but I want to pick up where I left off, if you don't mind. Having just been walking on a warm and windy beach. So talking about storytelling again and telling the story that you'd like to happen in your life, it kind of changes the world from black and white to three-dimensional color and starts implanting those feelings and thoughts in your mind. And even if you know it's not really true, it still adds that extra dimension and joyfulness, or it can do. So why not?
Absolutely. And another squirrel crossed is studying improv along with studying the basics and dynamics of storytelling. And one of the things I like to joke with is anytime I see people with, like a cast or something, cast on their foot, cast on their arm, and in public, Tina's watched me do this 100 times, and I'll walk up and I'm like, okay, so out of curiosity, what happened? They're like, oh, I fell. And I'm like, okay, that's the real story, but what's the fun story? What's the one that, 9 ninjas, I was in a dark alleyway and the first one is finally coming out of a coma and this is what I got. They look at me like, what? Like, you gotta have some fun with it. I mean, tell that story first, and then when people are like, really? No, I tripped and fell. No, I like the ninja story better. Good.
And that's the one they're going to remember anyway.
Exactly.
And you've made it a little bit real for them too, and colored their world.
Uh-huh. Well, we get a chuckle out of it, and everybody needs to laugh a little bit more anyway. There's also the game Balderdash. Anybody play that? Balderdash is where there are different ways to play it, but like you'll get a word and there'll be 3 different answers. One of them is the true answer. And then you can make up your own answer as well. If you make up your own, you get extra points. And people have to decide whether you're blowing sunshine or if you're telling the truth. And there were certain people that you would play that with, and they got so good that you're like, you should be a politician. You've got great storytelling capabilities. Yes, that's what I meant.
And this isn't so appropriate for people in the US, but Australians and this sort of Asia side of the world, one of a group that a few of us are in has started a story group, and we tell stories to each other. So we just get the juices flowing, and it really makes a difference to your life. And we tell our own healing stories at the moment is the theme. And, people like you, maybe start your own story group. It's a lot of fun. And it really pushes through the I can't, and it pushes through the I'm not a good storyteller. So anybody in Australia, I can give him a link if you make contact with TJ.
The other thing that it does, I've found, is it helps you to think on your feet. The better you are at being able to tell stories and keep people interested, the better opportunities you have at getting your point across, getting lessons put across, things of that nature. And my wife and I watched a movie the other night, and it was really cool. I ain't gonna lie. It's called Labor Day. Highly recommend it. Another one that I highly recommend is the original version, A Man Named Ove, and it's a Swedish film. Highly, highly recommend it. Tom Hanks redid it, and because of some of the nature of the story, I haven't seen his version yet, but I'm terrified that he vanillaed it. So watch the original. You'll have to read the subtitles because it's all in Swedish, although it was even better for me because after living in Sweden for a while, I realized I still recognize some of the words, and it was fun to see the verification.
Just sort of taking this another step further on the fun aspect of storytelling. It was a long time ago, but there was a television series in Australia called Thank God You're Here. And they took actors and comedians and created a set and a scenario where a disaster had just happened or was about to happen. And they threw this is going back into the improv idea, they threw the actor or comedian onto the set from a doorway. They didn't know what they were going into. And the first line was, "Thank God you're here." And then the actor was put in the position of having to find solutions and make it extremely amusing. And it was really wonderful for stretching your mind, and to play that game with other people. Yeah, it's a lot of fun if you have to then find your way out of this disastrous situation.
The other thing that we learn is some very, very recognizable hypnotic inductions are once upon a time, a long, long time ago. Do you remember when? But
in a far off land.
In a far off land. But the most recognizable, once upon a time. And when I pointed that out, people were like, "That's in a lot of kids' movies." I went, "Yeah. Why does it work for the rest of your life?" Because it got imprinted so well by a large movie Goliath, that it imprinted
And in
everybody.
storybooks before that.
Yes, absolutely. Once upon a time in a land far, far away. Tell me the story, oh please. Kind of like one of my other favorite movies, Princess Bride. My wife hates that movie. Don't judge her. She's a work in progress like me. But yeah, the first time she said she hated it, I was like, no, the Princess Bride. Have you seen it? Want to watch it with me again? I've only seen it 20 times. Yes. Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Anybody know the rest of it? Then you haven't seen the movie enough. Got to watch it again. And if you get if you are lucky enough to get the version that has the cast reunion outtakes, yeah, somebody's watched the movie. I don't think that means what you think it means. But in the outtakes with the reunion, they talked about some of the stuff that they didn't realize how impactful it was going to be. That line, the actor who portrayed that person said he had no idea that for the rest of his life, that was going to be his, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back. Yeah, this guy. Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. And now we're talking about movies. So we got 17 minis left. Anybody else got anything they would like to? We can go into movies and some of the concepts and the storytellings in there if you want. But if you got something else you would like to bring up as a subject. Oh, back to Labor Day, the movie. One of the interesting parts was one of the main characters tells this kid, sometimes if you want to throw people off, you tell them exactly what you're going to do, and they won't believe it. And it's the best way to give them to throw them. And I can tell you, well, spoiler alert, and I'm not trying to ruin the movie because it's that good. I'm not going to tell you what the ending is. But a convict escapes from a prison while in a hospital, and the kid goes, well, how did you escape? And he said, I told the guard, if you leave this room and go get coffee, I'm going to get out of this bed and I'm going to jump out that window and escape. He goes, you told him that? Sometimes you have to tell people what you're going to do, and they'll look at you and not believe it. And that's the best time to do it. What's the best way for a liar to cover up? You ever lied to me? Of course I have. You what? I lie to you all the time. I told you that your cats don't smell. Princess Bride remake. Oh, you rock. Yes, is there anybody on here who has not seen the movie The Princess Bride? You're welcome. Lots of big names in it. Great storyline.
Tell you, I won't be watching it anytime soon.
Total rom-com. Yeah, you don't have to. It's probably too funny and cute for you.
I mean, if you knew how to motivate me, you'd know that's not the way.
No, I just wanted to see your face. Did it messing with you? Yes. No, it's worth watching, especially if you the part where Linda pointed out the phrase that came out of there. I don't think you mean. I don't think that means what you think it means. Because it's a battle of the minds between two people. And it's hilarious trust me, in the movie, you will recognize about a minimum of 3 people that you've been around in your life. At least 3. Which is probably why it was so popular. And it's told as a grandfather reading his grandson a story out of a book. So I got a question. What is some of your guys' favorite movies? Yes, lots of plot twists.
Now, when you said you have a question,
I have a question.
usually we have questions.
Yes. Well, I've been waiting for questions and bringing up baby. I don't know if I've seen that. I'm going to have to put that on my list.
There's so many. Are we talking about Disney? Are we talking about Galaxy Quest? Now I started to think of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Screwball comment. Anybody seen the movie The Bear from the early 90s? It won many, many awards for cinematography because it didn't have a narrator. It followed the life of a little bear cub. And the only time that you hear any language is when the bear cub has an interaction with humans. Very entertaining. Another one that I own. Okay. Let's see. Now I'm going to have to hit you guys with some more comment.
I got a question.
Yes.
Okay. For the group, what does self-love look like to you?
Okay, folks.
I'll jump in. Why not? It's not words, but one of the inductions that I really like to do is a self-love induction. And so what I do is I say, okay, think of somebody that you love a lot, and then imagine them also in a pure innocent state. So it doesn't have to be a person. It could even be an animal, whatever the case may be. And anyway, I let you sit in those feelings for a while. And then I have you think of somebody who loves you unconditionally. And I have you, after you've rehearsed all those feelings for somebody else, step into that person that loves you and just notice what you feel, notice what you notice. one of the things I like to do with the person that you love, if you think of, let's say they're a baby and they throw up and you have to clean up the mess. You may be mad at the mess, but you're not hating the baby. Just to kind of look at those little things of, I could still hate the mess and still love the baby. I could still, recognize this is not as big of a deal as that person thinks it is. And then kind of notice how you feel those same feelings when you're in the person who loves you. So.
I like that one, Holly. That's great.
Yes. Anybody else? I'll throw one of my favorites in. Celebrating every little victory and getting used to it and getting proficient at it. I think we take too much for granted, and we are so quick to celebrate victories of others and lift other people up. And yet we celebrate ourselves the least. One of the exercises that we did at Hypnothoughts Live this year by Kelly, I don't want to butcher her last name. Anyhow, she had this game, everybody was in a circle, and we would say something, but then you would point somebody out, they would have to come out, do the saying, and then they would have to say something about a certain person, about, I think you're awesome because, and then I think I'm awesome because, and the person that you picked out were the next one that would have to come in. We'd do the saying and go over again. And when it got done, part of the conversation was, how easy was it for you to pick out something that the person you pointed at was awesome about? And what did it feel like when you expressed what you think you're awesome about, or what's awesome about you? And it was almost unanimous that people were like, well, when I had to say it about me, it just felt weird. It felt, because we're told not to be boastful, not to brag, and all of these things. And so we learn how to not celebrate ourselves. And it's a slippery slope, especially with children, because children will absorb what we do way more than what we teach them through words. I've had a couple of clients, and one of it, I was more aware of it because of a story that I heard about a lady who had depression, anxiety. But if you were to hear her talk about her kids were the most beautiful, brilliant, smart, all of the above. And if you asked her to describe herself, I'm not that smart. I'm just plain Jane, and I'm probably not going to accomplish much. And the person that was working with her was brilliant enough to bring the children in. And with their permission, mom was in the other room and interviewed her 3 kids separately and said, how would you describe your mother? She is the most beautiful, intelligent, awesome woman. How would you describe yourself? And when mom heard that, because she played all of mom's recording and the kids' recording in front of all four of them, all of them were impacted.
Cats in the Cradle.
Yes, Cats in the Cradle, great song, great lesson, great analogy. And if anybody isn't familiar with the song, yeah. Well, that brings us up to 4 minis left. Any closing comments, ahas, epiphanies, things you'd like to share, or something you would like to, if you guys think of something that you would like as a topic, please reach out, let me know. Mine is just, I come up with these through the week of stuff that, I help people out with, or stuff popping up, but you guys have an entire hour to yourself. So next week, if you've got a topic or something that you got questions on or whatever, that's your time to bring them up and let us all chime in and help you with. That brings us down to 3 minutes. So if nobody else has anything to share or anything, I guess I will let you guys know, as I do every week, how much I absolutely heartfelt appreciate you guys showing up. I always say it, one thing that I cannot give anybody back is time. So for you to take that commodity that you cannot replace yourself and share it with me, I don't take that lightly. And I willingly, happily share my time with you because of what it gives me. And thank you for allowing this to be recorded so that we can share it with others. If there was something, if you saw anything or heard anything in here that somebody needs to hear, please share it with them. Invite them to come next time. The more the merrier. But that being said, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, I thank you as well. For those of you that are watching the recording, yeah, you made it to the end. Even if you fast forwarded through some of the stuff, the good stuff was the stuff you skipped over, so you might want to go back and listen again. And make sure to click subscribe, ring the bell, leave comments on Facebook. And until the next time, thank you all. Round of applause for all of you. Big hugs, great energies.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, TJ, for doing this every week.
See you in 7. Have an awesome week.